Hello friends! I am finally back with another product review. In today's video, I will be using the KURETAKE GANSAI TAMBI watercolor palette. All the supplies that I use will be listed in the description down below. Before I start the illustration, I wanted to talk a little bit about how this palette is a different kind of watercolor than what most of you might be used to. KURETAKE is the brand of these paints, and Gansai is a specific type of watercolor. Western watercolors such as Winsor & Newton or Daniel Smith are made up of pigment and gum arabic. Gum arabic is the binder and is what makes Western watercolors typically transparent, very fluid, matte, and generally with more staining power. These properties, however, can vary from color to color. And these are the types of watercolors that most of you are probably accustomed to. Gansai watercolors, on the other hand, are made up of pigment and a combination or single use of things like animal hide, glue, beeswax, sugar syrup, and glycerin. In other words, totally not vegan. But yeah, these paints originated in Japan, and this binding makes the paint have a slightly tacky, thicker consistency, and when used with small amounts of water can be glossy because of the gluey binder. YouTuber Sadie Saves made a really great video that goes more in depth about the differences of these two types of watercolor, and if you're interested in learning more, I'll have her video linked in the description box below. Now that we've got that out of the way, on to the review. I will mention that this illustration that I did in this video was not my first time painting with this palette. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen me post a few other pieces that I did previously. The palette that I purchased comes with 36 colors in total, including 3 metallics. Each color comes in a large removable pan that are individually labeled, so you don't lose track of which color is which I find very helpful because some of them look very similar. After having painted with these a few times, I've found that this color selection was great. I was able to use my typical color palettes without having any issues, and the metallic colors are quite nice. My personal adjustment would maybe have been to have 1 or 2 less greens. I find myself not using green often in my color palette, so I think another shade of brown or some kind of magenta would have suited me a little bit better, but otherwise I think I was able to do everything that I needed with the colors that are here. Plus, considering that this is a Japanese palette, they probably had landscapes and florals and things like that in mind, so it makes sense that there is a large selection of greens. That being said, even the outside of the box is green, and it's really beautiful, by the way. It is a cardboard though, which makes me a little nervous of ruining it since this is a watercolor palette. But I will say on the inside of the box, it does come with a thin plastic cover, which I assume to be protecting the paints, but I suppose could also double as a mixing palette. Personally, I just use my porcelain mixing palettes instead. I find it helps save table space since the palette itself is quite big, which initially bothered me at first since I have such a cluttered desk, but I have now found myself really enjoying the oversized pans because it allows me to use larger flat brushes without crushing the edges of the bristles like I normally do with a typical half pan, so that's been pretty nice. Also, side note, who else has the messiest workspace and constantly has to shuffle stuff around to use their desk? I am so guilty of this. It's really bad. I keep buying more storage drawers, and yet I never have enough table space. And I mean, the solution would probably be to stop buying more art supplies that I don't use fast enough, but, you know, let's be real. That'll never happen. And I think I just have to be more organized. But anyway, back to the review. For the most part, I approached the KURETAKE GANSAI palette the same way I paint with any other brand. I used a cold press 140 pound watercolor paper with a variety of synthetic paintbrushes, which are my usual go-tos when painting with watercolor. The main difference that I noticed with the Gansai, though, was that it does not stain or absorb into the paper right away like most watercolors do. This allows me to move the paint around on the surface before it fully sets. And so if you make a mistake, most of the time you can take a clean wet brush and lift the paint off of the paper before it stains. I've heard that this makes the paint more difficult to layer, but as you can see from watching me paint in this video, I use many layers and didn't really run into any issues with the layer underneath being disturbed. I think this is probably due to the fact that I made sure to wait for the paint to be really dry before I brushed on another layer. The one thing that I don't love about the paint, however, is if you use too many layers, the surface starts to become glossy, which is, as you might have remembered from the beginning of this video, that is due to the binder that is in the paint. For me, this is just a personal preference and not a detriment to the quality of the paint, but if you don't mind having a sheen, like a glossy sheen on your paintings, then you can, carry on without having any problems about that. Something to note about these paints as well is that people generally recommend only mixing 2 or 3 colors together at a time. Otherwise, the color will become quite dull and muddy. For the most vibrancy, they are best used as pure as possible, with water, of course. For me, anyway, when mixing my paints, I try not to combine more than 3 colors at a time anyway, so I didn't really run into that problem when I was using the Gansai paints. Overall, I really enjoyed using the KURETAKE GANSAI TAMBI palette and have continued to use it since this illustration. I was not paid or sponsored by anyone to make this review, by the way. I just thought I'd give this palette a try since I had seen so many other fellow illustrators use it, and I thought I could provide some extra insight for you guys. I've never been a brand loyal type of artist, so of course I still use my other watercolors, and will jump back to this one when I'm in the mood for something a little different. So, in conclusion, if you've been itching to try something new and happen to see this palette go on sale on Amazon like I did, I definitely recommend giving it a try. It's also available in a 24 color set if you don't want to commit to this gigantic one. And lastly, to finish off this illustration, I did use a magenta acrylic ink for the line art and my trusty white acrylic paint marker for the white highlights and stars, because I can never resist a good highlight, and I am a sucker for the little sparkle details in all of my illustrations. Also, as of the publishing of this video, I currently still have sticker packs available of all these dreamy gals. If you're interested in grabbing a set, you can click the link in my description box there for the link to my shop. I really do think they're super cute, and you should get some because they would look cute in your life. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it informative or at the very least enjoyable to watch my process. If you haven't already, you can follow me on Instagram at I'm a Wonder. I'm pretty active on there, so feel free to check me out for more frequent content. I do apologize for my inconsistent uploading here. I'm still so new to the YouTube world, so hopefully I can get my shit together and post videos at a more consistent rate in the near future. Yeah, so big shout out to those of you who have subscribed already. I'm very thankful for that. So I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.